welcome everybody. Let's give another minute or so for everybody to come in. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Please, while you're waiting and while we're waiting for other participants, please can you put in the chat where you are from and where you are joining us from? Let's see, where have we got people joining us from? I am in South Africa currently. Caitlin, you're in the US. Whereabout in the US?
I'm in Canada, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm in
Whereabouts
Calgary,
in Canada?
Calgary. So
Oh,
more
beautiful.
west. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Hello, Namrata. Thank you for joining us again. I recognize your name. Who else is joining us? Share your or change your names if it's not your name. And where are you joining us from? Saudi Arabia. We've got Saudi Arabia. We've got Bahrain. We've got Namrata, if I'm correct, last time was India. Yes. Okay, I see that now. Who else? Welcome, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be a goodie. It's something that not only is essential for youngsters, kids, teens, but us, teachers, adults, humans. It's good for humans. So we've got people joining us from Bangalore, Saudi Arabia again. Okay, this is getting exciting because I love this topic personally. I think everyone in the world should get a manual on this because maybe we would have a more cohesive human race. But at the end of the day, we are here to learn some amazing, I would say, roadmaps. Caitlin's going to give us roadmaps on how to build emotional intelligence in kids, in us, how actual techniques that we can follow, and that it actually having a good emotional intelligence it really adds to our mental health. Reading situations, reading people, understanding our emotions and how to process them, I think is a very, very important way to live, especially with social media and technology just growing at a crazy rate. So Caitlin has experience with youth at NGO, at non-profits, and has been working in the corporate, from what I understand, the corporate world, and helping business people with emotional intelligence, which I think is spectacular in the corporate world. So I'm going to hand over to Caitlin, and she is going to give us some beautiful words of wisdom and golden nuggets today. So Caitlin, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. And it's so great seeing people from joining from all over. Because I think, like Nina said, this is such a human topic. And I find whenever I have these conversations, it's something that people can come together on as a shared, very human experience to have emotions and to go through challenging things. But what is always great to me is to hear all of the different ways in which people are already, helping their own mental health or finding wellness. And so having global perspectives on that is so wonderful to see, what works for you. And, hopefully you come away at the end of this session with maybe one new thing that you can take away, whether for yourself or for youth, young people that you're working with, or really anyone in your life. Would hope that you could take something away. Before I get into things, Nina, did you want to say anything more around Shimonly or the organization, or am I good to just go ahead?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, this is why we always introduce our speakers and why we approach you guys and ask you to come speak to our community is purely because what you teach and what you believe in completely aligns with what we teach our students and is in our curriculum. And in fact, emotional intelligence is one of our core skills that we implement into our curriculum. So we are totally and very excited to see if you can shed some new knowledge for us on this and that we can possibly implement into our classrooms. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Okay.
excited.
Love it. Okay. Um, so I will say my style in doing these sessions is I try to make it as interactive as I can. And so I would ask all of you to be ready and willing to use the chat. If you have things that you want to ask, you're welcome to come on camera and ask or put it in the chat. I would like for you to feel like this is something that you can actively participate in. So first, I'm going to start with my connection to this topic and why I care about talking about it for youth. You may have guessed, this is me when I was 12 years old. And so my first question that I'm going to ask to all of you, just to put in the chat, is when you're thinking about the young people in your life that, you know, maybe they prompted you to show up for this, whether it's the age of the kids you teach, or if you're a parent or an aunt or uncle, how old are the young people that you're thinking of? Because I'll kind of tailor my examples based on if there's a common age that you're all thinking of when I talk about young people. If you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat, just how old. For me, I kind of came back to this 12-year-old me. Okay, we have 11 years old. Any other ages that you're thinking of? Teenagers, okay. Any other ages that you're thinking of? 11 to 14, okay? 15, 13. And it's okay as well. If you don't have young people in your life you're thinking of, hopefully this is still relevant because I find this is stuff that I use. My kids are 10 and 12. So I use it with my kids. I do some of the same activities and same strategies for myself. I think it really does apply for any age. It's about 15, 13, 16. So a lot of teenagers or else that preteen age group. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So the reason I included this picture here of me at age 12, I was remembering a little bit about what I was like at that age, and maybe some of you can relate to this. You know, I was very academic minded. I was a very high achiever. And, you know, if you think back, I don't know if any of you have had, you know, yearbooks or things at the end of a school year. Sometimes people say, oh, what are they most likely to do something, most likely to succeed, or most likely to become a doctor, or whatever that may be. So seeing this picture, you may think that that was maybe the track that I was on, of like most likely to really be a very overachiever type, and these are all the awards that I won for that school year at age 12. The reality is that my favorite teacher that year said I was most likely to develop an ulcer before graduating high school because I was so focused without really great strategies, I think, for work, balancing my work with free time and things. Even as a kid, as adults, we talk sometimes about work-life balance or work-life harmony. It's important for any age to try and have like a bit of a balance. And it's true, when I got into my adulthood, I thankfully didn't get an ulcer, but I did struggle a lot with my mental health. And so a lot of the strategies that I'm sharing with you today are things that I picked up for myself because I struggled with mental health and having extreme anxiety and really needing some coping strategies. And so hopefully the young people in your life don't find themselves in a similar situation, you know, of mental health crisis where they absolutely need these tools to survive, you can be proactive and building up those tools now before you get into a position where maybe you're developing an ulcer before age 18. You don't want that. So in going into the research, maybe some of you are already seeing some of these things around, you know, how are kids coping? And research would say kids really, really need these strategies, really need to be paying attention to protecting their mental well-being. The book, the screenshot on the far left there, The Anxious Generation, this is a new book that was just released in the last few months, specifically focused on how technology and social media and things are influencing how young people, the very ages you're talking about that you're working with, how they are coping or maybe not coping with pressures in social media, and how this is causing great anxiety. There's research saying that teens are having a mental health crisis, and the overall data is that on average, 1 in 5 people at some point in their life will experience mental illness or have a mental health challenge. And so knowing that this is something that is all around us, I think all the more reason to be proactive and learn some of these skills. So I know Nina and I have both now talked about emotional intelligence. We are going to define that in a minute. Like, what is emotional intelligence? And we'll get into that. But I just wanted to make that connection between emotional intelligence, which is maybe that's what appealed to you when we signed up. But how does that connect to this mental health, this well-being? And there is really wonderful research there's references at the end if you're curious about reading about what the scientific evidence is to connect these things. But research has shown repeatedly that increasing emotional intelligence and practicing it, because it is a skill that you can continue to build over time. So increasing that emotional intelligence is linked to lowered stress, increased happiness, better physical health. And for all of us as adults on this, there's really good things around like cardiovascular disease risk decreasing, and really helping with that overall physical health and improved sleep, improved well-being overall, and also improved coping skills. And that's really where I'm going to focus today. We don't have a ton of time together, and so I wanted to just share some coping skills that would help connect to increased EQ and hopefully improved well-being. So to get started, I did say I wanted to define emotional intelligence. And so this is another interactive bit. I'm going to ask all of you to go to menti.com, or else you can scan the QR code. You just hold your phone up to the screen and ask, when you think of emotional intelligence, what words or phrases come to mind as what that means? And there's no right or wrong answer for this. So this is not a test. But I want you to think about, if someone asked you, hey, what comes to mind, you know, someone who is emotionally intelligent, or when I say, you know, we're working on our emotional intelligence, what do you think of? So just take a minute. I'm going to do this on my phone as well. And think about what that means to you. And you can put in a few words. We can go and do more if you like. So we'll give that just a minute. I'm already seeing a few words here coming up around empathy and being mindful. I'll give it a few minutes and then we'll share what everyone is saying. And I see in the chat as well, coping with situations easily. That's a great way of putting it. Yes. I'll just give another minute or two for you to put in any other words you're thinking of. Okay. Oh, there we go. Nina, I'm curious, are you in the Mentimeter?
I
If you're not,
am.
that's okay. I'm just wondering if it's showing up all there. You should all be seeing responses popping up. If you're not, then I'll switch my screen share. No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think switch screen share. It's
Okay. I'm going to stop my screen
yeah,
share for 1 second
yeah.
and switch my window so that you can all see these results popping up. Can you all see that now?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. Okay. So these are your collective ideas around what does emotional intelligence mean. You can keep putting things in. I think this will continue dynamically today. There we go. So all of these collectively comprise emotional intelligence. This is things around understanding and regulating emotions. You'll see that that's part of my definition. I love seeing inner peace. I think sometimes I wonder if happiness is a bit of an elusive goal that we shouldn't necessarily be chasing, because it's true. We won't be happy all the time, nor do I think we should be happy all the time. But I love the idea of being peaceful, or being able to be grounded, whatever emotion you happen to be experiencing, perceiving others' emotions, being mindful, self-aware. I see smile a couple times, spreading a smile or having a smile. That's a good goal. I like that. Having caring attitude, being resilient. Resiliency is huge. I see that, when I've been doing these workshops in corporate environments, work life is hard, and having resilient employees, who can manage as, the economy fluctuates or there's layoffs or lots of stresses in our workplaces. That resiliency is important for everybody, because life is challenging. Patience, being the bigger person. These are wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of your ideas around this. I think this comprises a beautiful definition of emotional intelligence. I'm going to switch back to my slides now. All right. Good. Okay. And thank you also for those who put ideas into the meeting chat here around being stable and balanced and responding appropriately to different emotional situations. You are all showing up here with exactly the right idea around, what are we here to talk about? Emotional intelligence, very broadly speaking, how I usually talk about it is that we are understanding our emotions and the emotions of others, but then using that understanding to help manage and to cope with the situations around us. So these words here are the four parts of emotional intelligence and how I usually talk about it, where we're understanding and using our emotions to manage our state, manage ourself, making active choices around, like, do we want to stay in this emotional state or do we want to shift and be somewhere else? And then perceiving the emotions of others. That's the component around really being able to relate to someone else's experience, even if you haven't had the same situation, that you would understand the emotions of what's behind that. I have not lived the same life, say as Dipti or as Nancy or Rona. I haven't lived your life, but we likely have experienced many of the same emotions. And so that's where you can really find that common human connection, no matter where you live or what you've gone through in life. So these are the core components of EQ. I said as part of the learning outcomes, you come away with some of this academic type of knowledge. So this grid is something I often come back to, and is sort of the traditional academic way of defining EQ, where there's two core components of self and others, how you relate to ourself and our own understanding of our states, and then others. And then on the other side, you see awareness, but then actions. So really within the grid here, we're going to talk about, self-awareness and then self-management. That's the self part. But then others, that's the social awareness, understanding social cues, what's going on around us, and managing relationships. And really for today, again, this is sort of an intro and getting a taste of things. I'm going to focus largely on that self, because that's really where EQ starts. It's pretty hard to manage, perceiving others' emotions if we aren't first tapped into ourself and our self-awareness and managing that. So we'll spend a lot of time there. And I'll give you some ideas too for how do you build empathy, which is another word for that, relationship management. Empathy is a key word there. Talk a lot about building a toolkit. This is the stuff I'm going to talk about with strategies. These are just tools for all different ways that we can address emotional intelligence, well-being. They all fit together. So you'll see I put in some ideas here of things that, have been part of my toolkit for how I stay healthy and try and find that balance and stable and coping with situations easily. I like time in nature. At times, it's included medication to help me. At times, it's included volunteering in the community. Almost always exercise and journaling, mindfulness. I'd be curious just in the chat, as you think about things that you're already doing or using to find that balance. If I say, hey, you're really stressed out, what are some of the things that you would say are already in your toolkit that you're already doing? And if you don't have anything, then hopefully this is inspiring a few ideas of, you can go and start a journal maybe, or find some time to do one of these things. But I'm curious, that's why I put the question mark. Just in the chat, if you could share something. Diet, definitely. And I find especially for kids, this is my kids anyway, this can be huge of, how are we fueling our physical self to promote well-being? Hobbies like painting, that's wonderful. I love that. Rest. I should have included sleep. Actually, sleep is probably my number one coping strategy. And also when I'm doing poorly, it's because I'm tired, almost always. Yeah, sleep. Sleep is huge. Taking a break. Yes, definitely. There's, I sometimes talk about different levels of breaks. It can be anything from a 1-minute break to a big vacation, but how you think about breaks is so important. Traveling. Yes, definitely. Any other ideas? Spending time with family and friends. Wonderful. Listening to music. Yes. Yeah. Anything else that you already have? Meditation, definitely. I think people who have a yoga practice often talk about how like the activities that you do in yoga, say with breathing exercises, are so helpful for this well-being. Yeah, breath work. See, we are on the same wavelength there. Yeah, nurturing hobby, enjoying me time, and staying updated with technology. That's cool. I feel like, Nancy, you could give a webinar on that. Learning new things. Yeah. Self-confidence. These are wonderful. I love it. Okay. Any last ideas around things you're already doing? Okay. So digital detox. Yeah, definitely. Meditation. Yeah. Digital detox can be really empowering. There's a book called 24/6, like instead of 24/7, 24/6. And the author talks about how for one full day every week, her and her family completely unplug, and the impact that has had on all of their lives. And she has teenagers, and bless her, manages to get them all to unplug for 24 hours. And it's just been transformative for her and her family. So I can recommend that if you're curious about one way to go about a detox, at least on a semi-regular level. Gardening. Yeah, lots of gardening. I started gardening this year. So yeah, it's been really helpful. Anyway, I'm going to go through 3 tools of things that hopefully, if you don't have this as part of your toolkit already, here's 3 ideas, and hopefully something here resonates with you as something that you can add into your toolkit again, for that well-being, that increased emotional intelligence. So first is identifying emotions. What this means is being able to attach vocabulary to actually express to someone else, like not just for yourself, but also say it out loud of what is it that you're experiencing. For kids, this is really important for young people because sometimes it can just feel like chaos in our bodies. And we don't necessarily, we're not always able to articulate what is that emotion that we're experiencing. But this emotional identification is really empowering by understanding how it feels physically to feel an emotion, to understand the words that go with that. It can help us to communicate the emotion to someone else, say for a young person, to communicate it to a parent, to a teacher, to their friends. It can help to build that understanding. But then the most important is that last bullet point. By doing this emotion identification, it can actually reduce the intensity of that experience. And so it's actually empowering to have some control of being able to identify it, reduce the intensity, and then decide what are you going to do about it. And you do have a choice. It's important to experience our emotions, but also important to think about how are we going to regulate ourselves. And if any of you have spent any time with toddlers, you think about, yeah, you don't want to sit in a temper tantrum forever. What are some of those strategies that you do to shift emotions? And this is where some of these things that you're talking about, meditation, photography, breath work, those are really powerful tools to shift our emotions. I often talk about Inside Out. If any of you know the movie Inside Out, it's a Pixar movie. They talk about these core emotions, and this is kind of the start of emotion identification, where these are some core, very fundamental human emotions of disgust, fear, joy, sadness, anger. It gets more nuanced in our vocabulary as we start to really dig into what are the variations of that. And so I have a little exercise I want you to try. I have a feeling it's probably too small for you to read it on your screen. So I'm going to kind of guide you through this exercise and just to see for yourself if this actually helps with identification. The first step for this exercise is I want you to think right now in this moment about how pleasant are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. That's all. Are you feeling pretty good? Feeling pretty pleasant? Maybe something distressing happened. Maybe you're really tired. Your pleasant might be lower. So keep that number in your mind first. How pleasant are you? And then the second step is to think about your energy level. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, about how energetic are you? There is no right or wrong answer, but give yourself a score there. And then, you probably guessed it, you're going to take those two scores and see what word, what emotion state corresponds with being, say, a 3 pleasant and a 10 energy. And so if that was my state, right now you would go across 3 up to the 10, it would say stressed. And if that doesn't quite fit for you, say you read that and you're like, that's not quite right, you can start to look at the words around it to see, do any of those resonate? And so this can be a way to start to build up that vocabulary and help to identify emotions. There's a lot of printable versions of this mood meter. If you Google mood meter, lots of versions for classrooms. I think especially for that preteen and teen age group you're talking about, this type of vocabulary is very age appropriate. For younger kids, if you were working with earlier elementary age, like say 5 to 8-year-olds, it's a little sophisticated for that, and they have even simpler mood meters with fewer grids. It would be like a 1 to 4 scale maybe, and starting for them to understand where are they sitting. And for those of you with kids on apps, a really great app that I really love, it's called How We Feel. And the reason I like How We Feel is because it incorporates this mood meter, but it gives little descriptions of what do those emotions mean, and what does it look like in action. So you can start start to explore the range of vocabulary so that it's not just these 5. You can start to really understand different emotions and how they show up. I'm curious if can you actually read, if any of you can actually read these little words, curious a little bit. Yeah. Be interesting to hear, like, if you were to give yourself a word for your emotions, if any of you are comfortable sharing. Yeah, it would be curious. I'd be curious to hear, like, how are you feeling today? How are you showing up? I know for myself, growing up, I showed you all my 12-year-old picture. In my family, I was very encouraged to try and get as quickly as I could to the words on the right-hand side, be more pleasant. And maybe some of you grew up in households like that too, where as soon as someone was feeling anything unpleasant, low energy, it was trying to shift as quickly as possible into something more pleasant and more energy. And I really would hope to encourage more acceptance and embracing that really there's value to experiencing unpleasant emotions. It can actually help build resilience. If you have no hardship and no unpleasantness, that's not helpful. And so to think about that as well, to when a kid is sharing with you, maybe they are sullen or miserable, to really meet them where they're at. Go, okay, and let's talk about that. What is that experience like? One thing that can also be helpful, and this one for sure you can't read, but I know that the middle part you can. I just wanted you to recognize the image. So if you go away and Google emotion sensation wheel, this can be really helpful, especially for neurodivergent young people who may struggle necessarily with the vocabulary piece, but maybe they can be more in touch with their physical state. And so on the far outer side of this circle, there's actually words that have to do with the physical sensation. And so maybe they can't figure out for themselves, or for adults as well, maybe it's hard to figure out the right emotional word. But using this wheel, it's one way to find if you can figure out the physical thing you're feeling. Maybe it is that you feel queasy, your body is aching, or you're feeling really awake, your heart is racing, you're cold. Those are the types of words on that outer edge. And so that can be a really helpful tool as well. If you're working with young people, maybe they look at this one here around pleasantness and energy, and like that doesn't fit and that doesn't work. This can be just another tool of, well, if not that, maybe start with how are you actually physically feeling? Do you feel jittery, like you drank too much coffee, and then you work inwards from there to see, well, what emotions might be attached to that. So this is one tool around emotion identification, thinking about how are you feeling and then being able to communicate. So I will recommend that. Before I move into the second tool, are any questions around that? The emotion sensation wheel, the how we feel app, anything there? Nina's good. Any other questions? Okay. If there's any question as I go through this stuff, please just put it in the chat. I'm watching the chat the whole time as well. So please feel free, because I want to make sure all your questions are answered. Okay, we're going to move into a second tool, this one around breathing exercises, which I know, Nina, you said you're already doing this. So hopefully, I would imagine some of you as well are also familiar with different breathing exercises. What this means, this is around intentional regulation of your breathing. So we're all breathing, one hopes, all the time. So this is not just breathing. This is actually paying attention. This is a mindfulness tool to bring you into the moment and really be intentional around I keep saying attention, but being in your breath and just focusing all of your attention and energy into the breath. Usually this is done for a set period of time. And so you do a breathing exercise With my kids, it's usually 1 or 2 minutes, and that's enough. It could be more, it could be 5 minutes. For those of you who are into meditation, you know, for you, maybe even longer. But it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be as simple as I need a minute, like literally a minute, to do some breathing. On a scientific level, doing breathing exercises, it can activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Our nervous system is there that's the fight or flight. If any of you have heard of that, that's that activating energy of like, we're in danger. Sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is what relaxes us. It's the rest and relax system. It's a good one to activate if you're trying to meditate. You don't want to be braced for danger. So it actually does physiologically activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And the nice thing about breathing exercises that I love is it can happen anytime, any place, any age. It doesn't matter. It's not like you need to be in a special corner or with any specific tools or anything like that. You don't need to go to the gym. You can do it anytime. I've given it the images for a few different apps. Again, if you want to explore them for yourself or with young people, Headspace, Balance is the middle one, and Calm. These are wonderful for providing age-appropriate examples, different ways of breathing. And so I would encourage you to check those out if you'd like some guided ones, or like there's a lot of free stuff on YouTube as well. And so that's what I put on this next slide is if you want, go onto YouTube for that guided practice, which is how I had to learn. And actually, I still prefer it to doing it myself. I find it's hard sometimes for me to do it for myself, but with guiding is very helpful. And so I gave a few examples here, everything from preschool, like the screenshot there from belly breathing. It's like preschool age all the way up to teens and adults. So lots of examples on YouTube if you just search breathing exercises. You know, and there's some channels there that really focus on mindfulness and this emotional intelligence. So a few ideas to get you started. But what I wanted to do is actually try it out. And if you are willing to play along, would love to do a breathing exercise right now. And hopefully this helps give you the experience of doing it so that you could share it with others too. So we're gonna go. So to start, what I'd like you to do is just make sure your feet are planted firmly on the ground, that you're someplace comfortable. If you prefer to be standing, that's okay. I'm sitting. If you're sitting like me, I want you to put your hands just in a comfortable position on your lap. Relax your shoulders. You can choose to keep your eyes open or shut, whatever is most comfortable for you. And just make sure that you're really feeling solid and grounded and comfortable how you're sitting. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and hold it for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 4 and hold it for a count of 4. So it's 4 beats for each step, and we call this box breathing. It looks like a box. I put a diagram there, so we're going to try it together. And I'm going to count with you. We're going to inhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold that, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold that, 2, 3, 4. Like you inhale again, 2, 3, 4, and hold it. And exhale through your mouth and hold that. And I want you to repeat a few cycles of inhaling through your nose, holding that, and exhale through your mouth, blowing out all that air and holding it. So do a few cycles on your own at a rhythm and a pace that works for you. Really feeling your lungs filling with air on the inhale. And really exhaling that air out on the exhale. And when you've done a few cycles on your own and you're ready to move forward, I want you to open your eyes and come back into this space. And I will answer your question in a minute, Nina. We're going to talk about this exercise. But before we do, I want you just to think in a word or a few words, how are you feeling after doing that breathing exercise? I see relaxed. Any other words? Again, there's no right or wrong. I've had people after this, I can remember one person saying they actually felt more agitated because they were getting in touch with how they were feeling and really being in their physical body. And that can happen. I like seeing peaceful, rejuvenated, calm, relaxing. Any other words? While you're thinking of words, still, please keep putting them in the chat. To answer your question, Nina, around in through the nose and out through the mouth, how I feel like there must be some science reason. If someone knows it, please put it in the chat. I was taught it as part of my yoga practice to really get into like the belly exhalation, that it's easier to tap into that, like getting deeper exhale by breathing out of the mouth. You know, you're nodding. Is that what you know of it as well? Like that inhale, exhale cycle?
So that's what I thought is inhale through the nose and exhale more out through the mouth. And yesterday I found out from somebody that she told me to inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose, not the mouth. So I was just wondering, like, I want more information around both.
Yeah.
So
Now I'm curious as well. Yeah, because my learning of it was grounded in nothing other than like that'll really get the air out.
Yeah.
So yeah, if any of you know, I'd be curious. And after this, I'm gonna go see because I'm curious. Yeah. I see improves lung capacity. Oh, I like that. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, because I think like lowering your diaphragm, even like from a physical level. Yes, so many kinds of breathing. And I have a feeling based on the things that you have all been sharing so far that perhaps you are all experts in different variations of breathing exercise, because this is something across cultures and geographies and generations. This is something that has been used as a tool in different ways for so long. A common example here, like say in corporate groups, is that the Navy SEALs are known for doing this kind of breathing. Navy SEALs box breathing. High performance athletes, we just had the Olympics. Also, you see Olympic athletes in high performance sport using breathing as well, again, as a way to center. So I'm just checking the chat here. Reduces your heart rate, slows down your blood pressure momentarily. Yes. I mentioned earlier those physical benefits, from a health perspective. I think if nothing else, that is wonderful reasoning to do this, not just for stress, but like on a long-term stress level, very powerful. Okay, and I am going to not pronounce it correctly, I'm sure, but Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, the box breathing. Thank you for sharing that. This is, so box breathing, very powerful. And with young people, again, as I said, there's no age restriction on this. And you know, I suspect, you know, many of you have likely used this already with if you have kids in your life, you know, but I would encourage you to think about how you could bring this into, say, a classroom environment, either one-on-one, working with someone, you know, if I find with young people, when there have been escalations or there's conflict, this truly is just taking a minute to reduce the intensity of a strong emotional reaction before entering into a conversation around like what's happened or what are we going to do next. It can be a really powerful interrupter tool. And so that's one thing. We have one last exercise that I wanted to share. And this is a very simple one, but again, also very powerful around gratitude and having a gratitude practice. This is now around a mindset that is oriented towards positivity and thankfulness. And what this can do is help shift focus. It's human instinct to hone in on the negative things that happen. A researcher, John Gottman, who does a lot of research on relationship psychology, has said in the context of relationships, that for every one negative interaction you have in, say, with your spouse, with a loved one, for every one negative reaction, you need to have anywhere from 3 to 5 positive reaction just to offset. So it's not a one-to-one, like for every bad thing, one good thing. No, we're so focused to really hone in on the negative that for every one negative, you need at least 3 over here, positive, up to 5. It depends on the research, what that ratio is. So to think about that around sometimes to be grateful and to appreciate, we really have to be intentional and think, what do we have to be grateful for? And shifting our mind's focus. This actually, scientific evidence has shown this can improve our happiness. It can improve our optimism. It improves our emotional intelligence. So this is a tool for self-awareness and reflection. And a lot of the research is focused on the power of writing it down. So not even just thinking to yourself, like, I'm so grateful for Nina and this webinar, and this is, I'm grateful for it. But if I were to go and write that down, that actually this is where the power is, and there's a connection that's made. And from a teaching standpoint, maybe some of you have seen this in action, where when students take notes, when we write down things, that this can help solidify concepts in our head. And so gratitude journaling has been shown to increase optimism anywhere from 5 to 15% more than when not written down. That sleep quality is also shown to improve, up to 25% improved sleep. Again, I put the references in this slide deck if you're curious. Another study from Berkeley, they pulled a lot of employees, large-scale survey of employees. 95% of the respondents said that a grateful boss, or maybe think a grateful teacher, is more likely to be successful. A Glassdoor study found that 81% of people were motivated to work harder when their manager showed gratitude. And so again, if you're a teacher in the classroom thinking about how could you motivate those students, showing gratitude for what they are doing, they're actually motivated to do more for you, so to work harder. So gratitude, extremely powerful. And so, you know, I'm not going to ask you to share because I do feel like this one is one that is often deeply personal. But I really would encourage you, before you fall asleep today, before you close out the day, to try it out for yourself and see what it does for you. To write down, again, the power of writing it down, at least one thing that you are grateful for. And maybe pause to reflect on the emotions that brings up. You know, thinking back to that mood meter, thinking about how has that benefited you and how might you bring that forward? And then thinking about, you know, how can you bring this into the classroom or, you know, with your colleagues or whatever environment you're in? How can you all collectively be more grateful? I know one thing that I do on a pretty regular basis is at the dinner table with my children. I say, hey, what's like one thing when you're grateful for today? Just one thing. And we'll go around and talk about things we're grateful for. I've seen in classrooms, sometimes they have a wall where people can put like post-it notes or other little memos of showing and expressing gratitude for others or things that have happened. So would love for you to think about how could you promote this attitude of gratitude, both for yourself and then to start spreading it. And if any of you already have a gratitude practice or some kind of gratitude exercise, please, again, keep saying, put it in the chat if we can learn from each other and share some different ways that we are practicing gratitude. That would be wonderful. I am curious, maybe just by putting like a little yes in the chat or something. Do any of you already practice gratitude and feel like this is a part of your life already and that you're intentionally doing gratitude? I know Zoom has emotion reaction, things like that. A gratitude jar. Rona, that sounds really cool. Is that like putting in little notes around what you're grateful for and adding to the jar? Would love to hear more gratitude jar. They got multiple gratitude jars in the class. I love it. Okay. Reflection activities of acknowledgements. Yeah. Gratitude journal. Wonderful. Yeah, this is great. I did ask my kids if they had anything formal at school, and they said no. So I'm hoping maybe this year I can influence and get a gratitude jar, because I like that idea of having, and because even then having a visual of seeing it fill up, I think that would be very powerful. Okay. I just have a couple last things, and then I'm going to make sure that I leave a few minutes for questions if any of you have questions at the end here. Just a few more ideas for things to think about in EQ. I mentioned at the beginning, there's the components of relating to self and then relating to others. So here's just a few more ideas of things you could think about for self-regulation, self-awareness, things that you could consider, and it may or may not fit for the group you're working with. One is having a safe space for regulating emotions. One of my kids has pretty severe ADHD, and this has been huge for them to have, this is the designated bench by the office where they can go and sit, where all the teachers have agreed that if my son needs to be out of the classroom environment, that he can go and be on that bench as a safe space to cool off before re-entering into the group environment. Maybe it's having a quiet room. I know some schools have like a whole space that is designed maybe to promote things like meditation or just calming down. These are like calm spaces. So what are those safe spaces where if someone's overwhelmed, like where would you go if you needed a safe space? Another idea, sensory toolkits. They're sometimes called STEM toys. That's what the picture is there on the right. So these are like those fidget toys, things like that, Play-Doh, little things that can be really helpful for regulating emotions for people. And so to think about, is that something that you want to have a box available, that if someone needs that as a way to help shift their energy or manage their emotions, it can be a really wonderful coping tool. Shifting your lessons outdoors. I did mention I live in Canada, so it's limited on what months we can do that in. But if you are in an environment where it's safe to do so, to get out in nature, there's evidence that connects being in nature, being outdoors, to improved mental well-being. This sun, vitamin D, fresh air, all kinds of things, really powerful. A few ideas for that empathy piece relating to others, relationship management. One is community volunteering. Volunteering is linked to improved well-being. In adults, it also does have both physical and emotional benefits as well. And if any of you are curious, I have lots of things. That volunteering is a passion of mine as it connects to emotional intelligence. So thinking about, do you have group volunteering that you could do, or community service, acts of kindness in small ways. Improv games can be really helpful as well for understanding others' emotions and responding to others' emotions. And I wanted to also mention this course. It's called The Science of Wellbeing. It's taught by a Yale professor, Dr. Laurie Santos, and the website is just drlauriesantos.com. I just finished the adult version, and I keep telling my family and my friends about it because I loved it. And so it's free. It's on Coursera, this adult course. So take that if you like. I learned so much from it. But they also now have a free teen version of the course. And it's just so great because it really does have, it's science backed. This is evidence around what makes us happy, how to focus on more on what makes us happy and how to shift our focus away from those things that ultimately don't fulfill us at all. So I have not gone through the teen course, but I can vouch for the adult version. So maybe something to consider as well, to share with the teens in your life. So I had a few minutes here for a discussion, but I think you've been sharing a lot as we've been going along. So I just want you to reflect on this, as we're closing out, to think about the ways in which you've already been promoting emotional intelligence and well-being. And thank you for being advocates of it in your spaces, because I think you all did show up with a pretty good understanding already. But thinking about what's one new way that you could support emotional intelligence for youth this month, maybe even this week. What's one new thing you could do? And what tools shared here today might you add to your own emotional intelligence toolkit? Or maybe even something that we didn't talk about here today that you think would be helpful. So I'd like for you to reflect on that. Again, references, can make sure that you get these if you're curious. Please do stay in touch. Would love if any of you have follow-up questions or anything. That's my email. Welcome to email me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and this is usually what I talk about. So I'm usually talking about mental health or well-being in one way or another. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can connect with me there. And I am looking towards doing these actually youth-facing workshops. So if that's something of interest, please reach out or let me know what questions you have. So we have a few minutes here for questions. So I'll just get into chat. And Nina, maybe I'll pass it back to you if you'd like to say anything too.
Sure, no problem. I do have a question. I'm not going to hog all the time we have left, but I'll ask a question just while anybody else wants to type it in the chat. If you don't want, oh, sorry, Farida. I thought you were typing a question already. If you have a question, you want to type it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask Caitlin a question, please, by all means. Manisha says, great toolkit. I personally loved how you put it as puzzle pieces and you pick and choose from the puzzle pieces, or it's a whole holistic puzzle that you have to work through a certain experience or emotion. But one of my questions is to you, in your experience with your work and with other human beings, do thoughts cause emotions? Or do emotions become thoughts?
I think of it as a circle, but probably even more like a tangled ball of yarn or something like that, where I think it is really hard to separate and also to slow down enough to even untangle what causes what. I have actively experienced for myself and seen in others that our thoughts can intensify our emotions. And so whatever comes first, and I'm not always sure if it matters, but our thoughts have the ability to increase or diminish the intensity of our emotions. And so that's where tools like journaling can really help to get those thoughts out and release them so that we can start to shift our emotional state, or things like talk therapy, or even exercising can be a way to release some of the energy so that we can shift. So I think knowing that it is important. Our self-talk is so important in influencing our emotional state. I see there's a question here from Salwa that I want to address, saying, you deal with a child that can switch from 1 to 10 in a second. So that escalated intensity of emotion, and they can cry quickly and it can be triggered very easily. I think my suggestion, Salwa, would be in those times, where the child is not in a heightened emotional state. When they are calm, those are the times to be practicing the tools or the exercises that will help them when they are agitated. I find waiting until I've been feeling like in crisis mode, that's not the time to be practicing. It's most helpful to be practicing early. And so I would say maybe picking one strategy and trying it out, or even a couple, like maybe having some of those, maybe the toys might be helpful for calming down, or a breathing exercise might be really helpful because it's quick and immediate. But to practice that when calm repeatedly, not just once, but maybe making it a daily thing. You could make it even at the same time of day. Say, hey, every day at 9 in the morning before you leave for school or whatever it is, we're going to try this. And that way, when they are agitated, they're more likely to turn to it as an automatic tool because it's part of their regular practice. But that is challenging for everyone. And so I'd encourage you as well to think about for yourself, how are you managing your self-care too? And making sure that you're breathing and journaling and doing what you need to do, because it's tough. Being an adult as an educator or parent supporting others. Any other last questions?
Salwa says, thank you, Caitlin.
Yes, of course. And thank you all for the comments as well. I'm glad if this is helpful in some small way, and hope you continue to learn and explore. Yeah.
Definitely. And even if you know this information and you've heard it and you've seen it online, it's always good to talk about it again and be reminded of certain things, because sometimes we forget, we're caught up in life and we forget about what we actually need to do to help ourselves, to help those around us. And I don't know about you guys, but a lot of that resonated with me on a personal level. And it's really nice to impart that knowledge to those around us so that we can all live in a more emotionally intelligent world and community, which would be amazing. As I said, as Shimanli, we integrate this kind of holistic learning into our education, well, should I say, into education systems. We come into schools and we help bring this into the learning environment when kids are introduced to these concepts. And yeah, we are looking at producing global citizens for the 21st century and 22nd century. So if you want to check out any of our holistic work that we do with schools, please go to our website. It's www.shimanli.com, or you can mail us if you have any questions for Caitlin. If you have any questions for us, please don't hesitate to contact us. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you for joining us. And from Canada to South Africa to the Middle East and Asia, I say goodbye and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.